This is Phil, Animal Mentality, and we are bringing you another installment of Animals Podcast, the PAKCAST. And we have here with me today Rob Hall, who hails from Killeen, Texas, where he's lived all of his life. He's 30 years old, has a fiance and a 4-year-old son. And this I didn't know. He's an AppleCare tech advisor working out of Austin at one of Apple's corporate headquarters. And if you have a problem with your phone or any device, he might be the guy you talk to, although I think your role is a supervisor there.
I am. I still talk to people, yes.
Oh, okay.
I talk to people all day.
All right, that's awesome. So you have to be pretty personable, right?
Yeah.
And in addition to all of that, he is one of the top 5 300-pound powerlifters in the world. And he has some interesting hobbies, though maybe we won't talk about that today. But why don't we go back to maybe not the start of your powerlifting career, because as I understand it, it came pretty late, right?
Yeah. Started in 2015.
And that I think, as I understand it, also that you had your first taste of powerlifting back when you were a senior in high school. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so I really wasn't even going to get into powerlifting. It was something that wasn't even in the school until my senior year, when a transfer coach came in and I came to the winter sports. I was in my season for wrestling. I was also doing track. I was doing shot put and discus as well. So I was invited to come try to do a powerlifting meet because I was one of the strongest guys at the school. The coach gave me a squat suit, a bench shirt, gave me a little practice for a few days, went through that, and then took me out to do a meet. So basically my extent of learning powerlifting then was about 4 days before I did my first meet. I didn't peak for anything like that. It was just something I was just
went out there and lifted.
Yeah, went out there and lifted. So just strength level that I had, just went out there and lifted. I ended up winning first place, which gave me an invite to the regional meet. I had enough qualifying points for that to go. And then I ended up getting 4th place at regionals to 3 of the other best people that were around there, and they were pretty good. So I ended up getting 4th out of that. And that was pretty much the extent of that.
So you picked up powerlifting in 4 days. You achieved a tremendous amount of success your first time out. You were a senior in high school. And then you gave it up for a couple of years.
Gave it up. Yeah, I forgot all about it. I didn't even give it a second thought. They didn't have any kind of like powerlifting programs, something you could get a scholarship. I didn't know that was even a thing until the last few years. I didn't know that was a real thing. I wanted to be a football player. I wanted to try to make it to the NFL. That wasn't the case because you need to also go to school. And I didn't want to go to class. I just wanted to play football. And that doesn't work out very well. So I forgot about doing all of it. Just wanted to play football, and that was it.
But now let's go back a little bit further. And so you grew up as a kid, and your dad was training to be a pro wrestler. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. So I've actually wrestled him a couple times. We were growing up, we'd always watch wrestling, WCW, WWE, all that stuff. And the day Owen Hart died was the day my dad started his training camp for wrestling, which was super grueling. It was out in the middle of the country in a big warehouse. Super hard for me. He came back so sore and so tired. He slept for so long, it seemed like. And then he continued to keep doing that. And he started when he was 36.
Oh, why did he decide so late to start this career?
I don't know. He just decided to do it one day because a buddy of his had got into this training camp. He found out where it was at here in Texas, and then went out to do the trial for it. And the guy liked him, and he did a really good job. He put out a hard work effort for it, and then continued to try to see if he can make something out of it.
Now, you must have been pretty young when your dad was trying out to be a pro wrestler, right?
Yeah. So it was around probably around 10, 11 when he kind of got that idea going. So around 11 or 12 is when he started getting into actually doing different wrestling shows. We travel around to different areas and stuff like that, mainly in Houston. And the training camp he would go to with this guy named the Necro Butcher. He's a very popular dude back then, a hardcore wrestler. Guy's the craziest dude I ever met. I started learning how to wrestle with him, and he would teach me stuff whenever they would have breaks. So we'd be up there, me and my brother, watching this training camp going on, and then when they'd break for stuff, I'd get in the ring, and then me and this dude would go over some stuff, and I just would try to emulate what I had just watched. So,
and did you travel around with your dad, or it was primarily during the school year, so you were busy with school, or?
Yeah, most of the time I'd travel with them because wrestling matches would be on a Saturday or on a weekend. So we'd go to different places here that were around in Texas. Been to some places that didn't have very many people in it, a population of like 10. I'd have small shows and have some with bigger shows that have 50, 100 or so people. Some bigger deals, some cool people. I met Abdullah the Butcher before. Oh yeah, so that was a cool thing. Sure. Dad's wrestled Jake the Snake.
Oh yeah,
that was interesting. So I would enjoy that deal, meeting all these kind of different people and stuff like that, and it was pretty cool.
So your dad, it sounds like, achieved a pretty high level of success.
Yeah, so he eventually made it into this magazine called the PWI 500. It's a pro wrestling magazine. They kind of rank more or less the top 500 people that have done well in these matches. And popularity wise, he was 420, I think, his first deal, which is pretty good. Out of all the hundreds of people, he made it in there, and it was a pretty big achievement for him then. He ended up becoming one of the first dudes at this federation to hold, I want to say, three different belts all at the same time, which is pretty cool. So
yeah, and I'd imagine that pro wrestling, as you wanted to break into the sport, it was a young man's game, and your dad, I think you said, was 36?
36, yeah.
And so that must have been challenging for him.
Yeah, very challenging, and just his character that he had is not something that's super marketable with something like the WWE. He's played a bad guy. He was from the trailer park. He had a Confederate flag with him all the time. He kind of looked like a biker, and that's kind of the demographic. He had super long hair. He had tattoos that would look like prison tattoos and stuff like that. He used to be a prison guard, but he had these tattoos that were not very intricate. They were like, kind of white trashy tattoos that you would associate with that kind of character. So that character his was, I thought it was really interesting. He went by the alias of Bobby Too Bad. It was a very, very interesting, develop into this character and this persona that was enough to strike fear into people when they knew they were going to wrestle him, because he trained with a guy named Necro Butcher, the outlaw Tim Brooks, Hot Stuff Hernandez. Hot Stuff ended up going to the WWE or the TNA and making some big money over there. And I've tussled with Hot Stuff a little bit. He's a very strong dude. He's very aggressive. So he earned that guy's respect. And when you get to that kind of level, you see my dad's name on the card, and you're like, oh shit. I've got to wrestle one of these bad motherfuckers that I've heard about. And if you weren't on top of your game, he would, you do this thing where you call giving the mustard. Where you put a little extra aggressiveness on a move or something like that, and maybe knock the wind out of your opponent because they fucked up or they weren't doing what they were supposed to be doing. And you kind of like, hey, get your shit together. One of those things. So that's when they do stuff like that. It's called stiffen your opponent. So if someone stiff them, you stiff them back. You give them the mustard back and like, hey, stay on top of your shit. So that way you don't want to get hurt. You don't want to go into this thing and you want to hurt somebody. And if you fuck up, that's how you hurt people. So some people got to be reminded about that, not to hurt people.
Well, just talking to you for this short amount of time, it sounds like you're pretty steeped in wrestling lore and wrestling history. So that makes me wonder, why didn't you end up pro wrestling yourself?
I thought about it at the time when I was younger. I'd go to these shows. We went to this wrestling match federation in Houston all the time, so we were always there. one day there, we were there, me and my brother. I'd always record for my wrestling match for my dad, so I didn't have time to really play around or do anything, run around. My brother would sit there, watch the match, and we'd sit there and I'd record. At one point in time, some kid was trying to like knock holes into the girls' restroom. So instead of them like trying to figure out who it was, they just immediately blamed it on me and my brother, and then didn't allow us to come back.
Why do you think that was?
I have no idea. Whatever politics that were going on for that, I'm a kid. I didn't know what was going on. My dad explained to me when we got home that that's why we're not going to go. But then they ended up finding out who did it. But he was so upset with them blaming us in the first place without even trying to like figure out who it was, give us the benefit of the doubt, because it's not like we were bad kids or anything like that. That he didn't want us to come and never told us that it was okay for us to come. They never apologized for telling us not to come. So
the principle.
It's very exactly. So that irritated him. He didn't want us to come back and be around those kind of people. So that was it.
So that was the end of your pro wrestling career.
Yeah. So I've done a couple matches since that incident with my dad, just for shits and giggles, right? So he's still trained for it and all that stuff. We went out to a couple different places and wrestled, but nobody knew we were father and son. He's a white dude with long hair. I'm brown skin, short, brown skin with curly hair and my like big curly fro. You wouldn't really know that we were actually related, you know. So we do the match, and then we get done, and like we'd sit talk and stuff, and then they'd find out that we were related, and he was like my dad. And then it'd blow people's minds because they just watched this dynamic, and it was pretty fun.
So I imagine even then he was the villain, so therefore you were sort of the hero?
Yeah, so the good guy, the face. Yeah. He'd be the heel. His characters, even him being a heel sometimes, he has such good charisma that people like. He's like a Stone Cold kind of character. He's a bad guy, but people want to see him win. So that's how he ended up growing into his character. But when we wrestled, he'd be the bad guy. I'd be the good guy. I'd wear surfing shorts, board shorts. I had really long curly fro, and I'd wet it up so it looked like I was Hawaiian. So I had like this Hawaiianish character.
Oh, okay.
Like, right.
Can I ask you what your name was?
I went by the alias of Bad Business.
Okay.
So, I mean, if you kind of get the gist of my dad's name, Bobby Too Bad, I just took that over.
I see.
The other part and kind of like Bad Business was like, my alias for that. So if you didn't kind of get that together, once we kind of like let each other, everyone know that we were father and son, then you kind of get the names together.
Yeah, makes
more sense.
So even though you didn't have a long career, you must have learned something or were influenced tremendously by your dad's efforts to succeed in his passion. Is that right?
Yeah, definitely. So the grit he had to try to just stick into that and not be one of those guys that had just a given talent, just to work hard, to keep trying to make something out of himself, to show that you could do anything that you want if you actually just try and to apply yourself to do it. So he tried to instill that kind of like mentality into us by trying to do that. Didn't verbally say it or anything like that. He just kind of did it with his actions. Example. Yeah. So with that kind of thing, I would always just kind of stick my foot out there just to try something and see what happens. And kind of carried that kind of mentality throughout my whole life. Just try something, see if you're any good at it. If you are, if something that you enjoy, try to develop it and then make it better.
A lot of the athletes that I've spoken to, for example, bodybuilders, when they were growing up, they were overweight and had problems. They were bullied. Was that something that you experienced as well?
Yeah. So I was a more heavyweight kid, especially in elementary school. I'd get picked on and made fun of for my weight. I had one point in time dyed my hair blonde. So I had blonde hair, blonde curly afro and stuff. I'd wear my socks up to my knees. Kids, they like to be relentless in trying to be popular and try to make fun of some other kids and stuff. I wasn't.
Because they're different.
Yeah, because they're different.
But it sounds like you wanted to be different.
Yeah, so I just enjoyed doing what I felt was okay. So I didn't have like a rule book that said that I had to do a certain thing. I noticed that other people would dress, but I didn't have the kind of money to have certain things like nice clothes like everybody else and stuff like that, which didn't really bother me. But it's a big deal for other people because they'll see somebody's not wearing like a name brand stuff, and then they try to attack them. And then that's how I kind of just grew up, just people just poking at me all the time.
Yeah. So it sounds like then you did try to really develop your own personality and your own style.
Yeah, so I just whatever I was comfortable with doing, I would just try it, see if I liked it, and then that's how I would roll.
And so some of the lessons you learned by watching your dad as he pursued his career, did you apply that growing up in elementary school or middle school?
So elementary and middle school, my dad would come to the school and like participate in our activities before school would start. And the kids always, all the other kids always loved my dad would come because not all the parents would actually stay there. They did go to work, but he had extra time to spare and would play with the other kids. So they always enjoyed his presence being there. So, the charisma he had just to kind of be out there and just, play tetherball or foursquare with these kids and just be himself and enjoy himself before he had to go do a long day at work. That's something that I'd always notice and be like, all right, well, just be yourself and just have fun and just try to enjoy yourself. That I've always kept here, and that's one thing I always remember from when I was little, getting in school.
And so, as I understand it, you started playing football in middle school, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you really like to hit people.
I do. So I started playing football in middle school, and I initially was playing offensive line. I was a pulling guard. I was a bigger kid, so I'd be able to fill up the area. I was also pretty quick. And then I didn't like playing offense. I hated blocking people. It's so boring. Every time we'd go put on full pads, we'd always run through drills like the Oklahoma drill. Something you got to go through with trying to figure out who can hit who has the balls to actually just step in there and go head up with somebody. That kind of excitement every time you do that drill is something I wanted to emulate every time I wanted to play, but you can't do that playing offensive line, at least from my perspective. I couldn't go hit people and tackle them and knock them over. I had to hold them up or block them or just move them out the way. That's not fun to me. I wanted to put people's faces in the dirt.
Why is that, do you think? Do you think it goes back to wrestling as a kid or the way you were treated in elementary school, or what does that go back to?
It could have been both, mainly because I didn't have an outlet to expend any of my anger that I might have had built up from all that resentment from being picked on and stuff like that. So being able to collide with somebody and then be able to hit them like that, you get to release that kind of that energy.
Sure.
And for me, that was really exciting. We do these drills and I would get super amped up to go hit people and playing offensive line. I couldn't do that. They let me play defensive tackle for one game. I had a few sacks in there, forced fumble. I was even in the paper the next day.
Not too shabby.
Which was great. I loved it. It gave me joy again for playing a sport that I pretty much liked to watch and wanted to emulate, but I didn't want to play offense. So it gave me a little glimpse of hope in there. I didn't continue playing offense again the next year, my 8th grade year.
So even with that one performance, they didn't move you?
Didn't move me. They kept me on offensive line the next year as well because I'm good at it, because I practice it. So I didn't want to be shitty at it. So I'd go through all our practice drills and stuff like that, and I'd be the best one to do these drills.
So you had a work ethic. Where did that come from, this work ethic and desire to constantly improve yourself?
I want to say that probably came from just watching my dad do those training deals in wrestling. So
were they grueling, I take it?
They're grueling, yeah. And that's the mat, when you land on that, when he first started out, it's basically just like a canvas over on top of 2x4s. It's not really any padding on there. That's how you learned to fall and like take these bumps on.
So thin canvas right on top of 2x4s?
2x4, yeah. So when you go over to neck row butchers, it's not as thin. There's a little bit of foam padding, something that you'd find underneath the carpet. A little bit of foam, a canvas, and right on top of 2x4s. And those 2x4s on top of these bending metal bars. That's where you get the loud sound when you hit on top of them.
And there's a little bit of give there.
Yeah. So a little bit of give, it'll sway a little bit. It doesn't hurt like painful wise where it's going to kill you, but you'll feel it. Yeah. So that kind of thing, watching him go through that, training for hours of doing that, and me doing it myself, I just kind of developed a feeling where I kind of enjoyed that kind of output of pain. So it didn't really bother me and getting hurt like that. I would enjoy being able to feel that kind of contact.
And so you think this is why you wanted to play on the defensive side of football.
Yeah, because you can get to hit people, and even if you don't actually get to make the tackle on whoever has the ball, you get a little more leeway to be more aggressive when you play defense versus playing offense.
And I assume that at some point your coaches recognized this desire and this talent that you had and moved you over.
Kind of. You would have thought that. So middle school wise, we all band together because it moves two middle school schools together into a high school team. And I went to their first summer camp they had to transition between middle school and high school. And I went to that camp every day. That's my first time actually training in a gym for and touching weights, like trying to find out how strong you were. We'd be in there for an hour. Then we go out and run conditioning drills for an hour. And I enjoyed that so much. I never missed a training day that whole summer. So I get up there my freshman year, and the first thing they do is put me on the offensive line. They picked me for offensive line. I was so pissed. I didn't want to play it no more. So
you thought about quitting?
Yeah. So once we got into full pads, we did that first day offensive line. I fucking hated it. I go into the locker room, and I was gonna quit. I was like, I'm fucking done. I'm gonna leave. This is it. I'm not gonna fucking play football anymore. This is stupid. The running back coach grabs me aside. And
did he know that you were thinking about that or no?
No, I hadn't told him. But this was it from 100 yards. I got to go from the end of the field to the other end where he was standing at, and I just started been in my head through that whole deal. And I got by him. He grabs my jersey and is like, "Hey, were you at the summer camp? Did you play were in the running back groups or anything like that?" And I was like, "No, I wasn't. I was there at the summer camp, but I wasn't in the special team group. I was in the heavyweight groups, the offensive line, defensive line, and stuff like that." And he was like, "You know what? Just come with the running backs and the fullbacks here tomorrow. Let me see what you can do." So that instant saved me from quitting. So I've never really quit anything before, but I got to the point I was so fed up with just playing offensive line. That was it. He brought me over to that, and I enjoyed it. So it was almost the same thing, and me still blocking people because I was still a big guy, still strong. But they gave me the chance to get the ball and run it, and then I could go try to run people over. So that's kind of developed that part where me hitting people as well, because I get to try to run somebody over or go try to flatline them. So when they told me to go block people, they would tell me to go knock them over. So it's almost like getting to tackle somebody there. I'm getting a running start. I'm getting to go collide with people. So I enjoyed it. So I played fullback that whole year. After the end of that freshman year, we get over and to do the spring game for the next year for sophomore season. And I'm still playing fullback for that spring game. And I remember my buddy throws an interception. It's close towards the end of the game. The game wasn't really going very well for the defense-wise. They're missing tackles and stuff like that. It was very, very sloppy. And he throws this interception, he weaves in and out of people. I make it to him, and I lay him out. I mean, just clean hit, drive him all through the dirt. It's a perfect, good form tackle. And the linebacker coach was super excited to see that kind of play, that tenacity of going after the ball like that they hadn't seen through the whole game. So they watched film. We all watched it and critiqued it and stuff like that. It comes to that part where I watched it, and linebacker coach gives me praise for it. So ever since that day, they moved me over to linebacker and gave me my shot there. So I got my opportunity. I took it and then showed what I could do and then made something out of it.
Well, let me back up a little bit. You were ready to quit that day.
Mm-hmm.
You were in ninth grade?
Ninth grade.
And the only thing that stopped you was the one coach pulling you aside.
Yeah.
Do you ever think, or how often do you think of that day and think to yourself, things would have been very different in my life had he not pulled me aside, or no?
Had he had not have done that, I probably wouldn't have been where I'm at now and had the same kind of intensity in wanting to train like I do now. Because although I enjoyed the summer camp of training there, I wanted to play football. That was my main thing I wanted to do. I wanted to play football. And I was not having fun playing football anymore, so I didn't want to do it. If I would have quit that day, I would not have been able to do anything, I think. Wouldn't have gotten wrestling. I wouldn't have gotten a track. I wouldn't have gotten to try powerlifting. I wouldn't have done anything. I wouldn't have any of that drive. I'd have just been a quitter at that point. So everything I would have thought about doing, I probably would have been quitting doing.
But do you think that really would have been the case? So let's say that scenario didn't happen, that somehow I'd be talking to you today, and you're 30 years old, and you'd be like, yeah, after that moment, I quit, and now I'm just a loser. Or do you think your personality, your disposition, your drive wouldn't have permitted you to be that person?
So I wouldn't have had the same drive because at that point in time, my level of competing also was evolving as well. So if I wouldn't have got to continue to compete at that kind of level in football, I wouldn't have built that same kind of mindset to continue to competing with everybody else in any other sport I decided to play. So I wouldn't have had that same. I might have ended up in powerlifting now at this point, but I wouldn't have the same kind of competitive nature I would have. I might not even been the same person.